All right, today we're going to dive into one of humanity's greatest achievements, which, funnily enough, is also one of our most profound and unsolved mysteries.
So forget what you normally think of as ancient. We have to go way, way back. I'm talking before Rome built the Colosseum, before the Greeks built the Parthenon, heck, even before the Great Pyramids of Egypt cast their very first shadows, this civilization was already thriving.
And you know, we're not just talking about a collection of simple huts here. We are talking about meticulously planned cities, multi-story homes, and, get this, sophisticated sanitation systems with actual indoor plumbing. Just to put that into perspective for you, their public works and their water management systems were more advanced than anything Europe would see for another 3,000 years. The scale of their sophistication is, well, it's just staggering.
Okay, so now imagine all of that. The cities, the people, all that knowledge, just vanishing. Not wiped out in some epic war, not crushed by a conquering army, but just fading into silence. And that's the mystery we're exploring today.
This civilization is known as the Indus Valley Civilization. And what's so fascinating is they didn't leave behind these grand tales of epic battles or conquering kings. Instead, what they left was a deep, really puzzling quiet. So the mystery isn't just about how they lived, it's about why they stopped.
What's really remarkable here is just how long and stable their civilization was. I mean, look at this. It all starts around 3300 BCE, with early villages starting to organize. By 2600 BCE, they hit their mature phase. That's when the great cities were built. But then around 1900 BCE, the decline starts. And it's not a sudden crash. It's the slow fade over centuries, until their greatest cities were pretty much empty.
So let's really try to grasp the sheer scale of what they built. You know, it's one thing to say they were advanced, but the actual evidence on the ground, that's what's truly mind-blowing. Okay, so at its absolute peak, this civilization covered a staggering 1.5 million square kilometers. Let me say that again, 1.5 million. That is larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. This wasn't just a kingdom, this was a civilization on the scale of a subcontinent.
And it was home to an estimated 5 million people. Now think about that. In a world that was mostly just scattered villages and small tribes, a coordinated society of this size was nothing short of extraordinary. They made up a huge chunk of the entire world's population at the time.
And the level of planning this reveals is just incredible. I mean, cities like Mohenjo-Daro weren't just chaotic jumbles of streets. No, they were laid out on a precise grid. They even used standardized bricks across an area spanning hundreds of miles. That implies some kind of centralized authority, right? A shared blueprint. Someone or some group had a very grand plan. And this tells you so much about their priorities as a society. While other great civilizations had, open drains and sanitation systems that were only for the wealthy elite, the Indus people built covered sewers and made sure everyone had access to clean water. It was a commitment to public health and civic engineering that was just unparalleled for its time.
Okay, so we know what they built, but the biggest puzzle of all is, well, who were they? Because when we start looking for the usual signs of ancient power, kings, massive armies, sprawling palaces, we find something very, very strange.
First off, the archaeology is pretty clear on this. There are no massive, opulent palaces. You just don't find these monumental structures dedicated to a single godlike ruler. They built great public works, things like giant baths and granaries for the community, but not grand homes for kings.
And then it gets even stranger. Archaeologists don't find large caches of weapons. Their cities aren't heavily fortified like you'd expect from major warfare, which really begs the question, how on earth did a civilization this massive survive for centuries, apparently without a huge military?
I mean, think about Egyptian or Mesopotamian art. It's filled with images of powerful kings smiting their enemies, right? But here, nothing. Not a single great statue of a ruler. No carvings celebrating a military conquest. It all points to a completely different kind of social structure. Maybe something more collective or egalitarian?
So if we don't find kings and armies, what do we find? Well, we find these incredible little clues to their daily lives. Tiny, exquisite art like the famous dancing girl statuette, who just looks so confident. We find children's toys, like miniature carts. We find thousands of these beautiful seals they used for trade. And we know that trade was extensive, with their beads found as far away as modern-day Iraq. Even their graves are modest, which suggests a society that didn't really believe in flaunting extreme wealth, even in death.
So here we have this incredibly sophisticated, seemingly peaceful civilization. And then, around 1900 BCE, it all starts to unravel. And the question that has haunted archaeologists for about a century now is simply, why? What happened? Now, what's really important to get is that this wasn't some sudden, dramatic collapse. It was a slow decay, a gradual unraveling over centuries. The incredible standards they had just fell apart. Those uniform bricks get replaced with sloppy construction. The immaculate drains start to clog up. And people began leaving the great cities, not because of some invasion, but because the system itself, the very thing that made them great, was breaking down.
For a long, long time, the go-to theory was a violent invasion, maybe by a group called the Aryans. But the archaeology just doesn't back that up. Today, the evidence points overwhelmingly toward environmental causes. It looks like the monsoon rains, which they completely depended on for farming, shifted, leading to long, devastating droughts. At the same time, one of their main rivers, the Saraswati, seems to have dried up completely. It was probably a perfect storm of climate catastrophe that their society just couldn't survive.
And so that brings us to their ultimate legacy, which is, in a way, a story that's still only half told. Because the people themselves, they're still silent. We have their pots and their bricks and their cities, but we don't have their words.
And this right here is the final, most frustrating piece of the entire puzzle. They had a complex written script with around 400 unique symbols, but it has never been deciphered. We have thousands of examples of it on those little seals, but we don't have a Rosetta Stone, no key to unlock it. And that means we don't know what they called their own cities. We don't know their leaders' names. We don't even know what they called themselves.
That silence is really their defining feature today. All of that incredible organization, all that ingenuity, all those millions of lives, they're all locked away behind a script that we simply cannot read.
There's this quote that I think just captures it perfectly. It's as if they aren't truly gone, but are just waiting, patiently buried in the earth, waiting for us to finally find the key, to finally understand their world. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. With every new archaeological technique, every new climate model, we're getting a little bit closer. So the question isn't just what happened to them anymore, it's whether we, after all this time, are finally learning how to listen to the clues they left behind.